Very nice to see you all. My name is Nick Vinder, co-founder of Circle Square. We're really delighted to welcome you all here this evening. It's nice to see so many Circle Square members, but also many of you who are not yet members. And for those of you who don't know Circle Square, we're a network of interesting and purposeful people. All of us are of a certain age. We're all over 50, and we each bring a wealth of life experience. And when we founded Circle Square in 2018, our vision was to put our collective wisdom to work to build a better world. And we do this by connecting people, by creating opportunities to unlock our combined energy, experience, curiosity, and wisdom for everybody's benefit. We have a rich program of events like this one this evening, and we run fortnightly coffee mornings focused around a particular topic. We've also got special interest clubs covering art, investment, books, gardening, photography, and walking. And we encourage an exchange of ideas for both personal growth and for the good of society. And today, I'm really pleased to welcome back John Steinberg, who was with us last year for the launch of his previous book, The Temple of Fortune. Many of you know John, but just in case you don't, a bit of background. John is a born and bred Londoner. He began his career in banking, then he moved into his family's furniture manufacturing business, and in 1987 set up his own M&A, mergers acquisitions business, which he ran for about 20 years, but then left to become a full-time writer. And in addition to Temple of Fortune, which we heard about last year, and hopefully many of us have now bought and read, you may have enjoyed his other novels, Shimon, Blue Skies Over Berlin, and Nadine. As well as writing novels, John has co-written and produced comedies for the stage. And I always enjoy mentioning the titles. One of the plays that he did was In the Balance. The other one is called W for Banker. And they were at the New End Theatre in Hampstead. And he's also written some children's books, so a very broad range of writing. And today is not quite the launch date, but I guess the preview date of his fifth book, 3 Days in Vienna, which is a sequel to Blue Skies Over Berlin, and the focus for this evening's conversation. So in a moment, John's going to speak a little bit about writing the book and just give us some background and some thoughts. And then we're going to watch a short video, and then we'll have an opportunity to hear your comments, for you to ask questions, and for us to have a little bit of a discussion. And we will keep going until no later than 7:30. You might finish a few minutes earlier. So I think with that, John, if I can, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Thank you. 3 Days in Vienna, as you mentioned, is a sequel to Blue Skies Over Berlin, although that was never the intention, that Blue Skies Over Berlin would have a sequel at all. It's a strange trajectory how it actually happened. I realized at the end of Blue Skies that there was probably another story to be told, but I was doing other things since then, other novels, old ideas, etc. And then I came back to the idea of making a sequel. And I was attracted, as I've always have been, by unobvious protagonists. Just a recap of Blue Skies Over Berlin, for those people who haven't read it, it's about a German woman's journey of conscience in the aftermath of World War II, how she comes to terms with what she denied herself seeing and feeling in Nazi Germany. She comes to London in around 1954, and through the medium of art, she gradually finds redemption. Later on in life, she meets Lillian, her closest friend, a victim of a child of the Kindertransport. They become very, very close friends. Charlotte finds redemption, I suppose, through Lillian, and Lillian finds some type of comfort herself for the sister that she never had. It ends up quite peacefully, and wasn't obvious what to do next if I wanted to do anything at all. And then I realized that there's a story in making Elizabeth, who is Lillian's dysfunctional teenage daughter, the protagonist of a follow-up book. Blue Skies Over Berlin finishes in 1998. 3 Days in Vienna starts in 2000, and ostensibly it's about a woman who's been married for 20 years, Elizabeth, who is denied any real knowledge of her maternal Austrian heritage and decides that she'll take a short trip to Vienna whilst the rest of the family are going on a half-term ski trip to find out more. What she encompasses, she certainly didn't expect. Even more so when she arrives back in London, she's faced with a domestic crisis that she never expected, and then spends the next, I suppose, half of the book trying to find justice for her husband, who has been a victim of a conspiracy that brings them, I suppose, closer together than they otherwise would have been. The story sort of goes back into Vienna and is really unresolved in terms of Elizabeth. That's why the caption, the line is a journey of a long awakening. And her journey isn't actually completely resolved at the end of 3 days, which is why I wrote a new end chapter, an epilogue, because I realize now this time that it probably needs a third book, and it will be part of a trilogy when I can get round to deciding exactly who should be. I know who the main character should be in the trilogy, but the whole idea is that it will make reference to Blue Skies, Vienna, and resolve itself, if I've done it properly, whenever I write it at the end of the book. So at the moment, it's a duology, which is the term I found out for two out of three. But the idea is that there will be a trilogy in due course. That's really all I can say about it without giving too much away. There is a short caption coming up, which will give some idea of what the book's about. I think the first chapter is free to download anyway on the website. And I'm happy to answer any questions anybody may have regarding that or any other of the books or what's going to happen in the future.
Fantastic. So let's have a quick look at the YouTube video, which will give us a little bit more context, and then we'll have a discussion.
3 Days in Vienna by John Steinberg. This new novel is the sequel to Blue Skies Over Berlin, where the main character, a young German woman called Charlotte, moves to London in 1954 under an assumed name and spends the next 50 years trying to come to terms with her past during the Nazi era. She meets Lillian, a child of the Kindertransport, who becomes her closest friend and eventually helps to allay her guilt. 3 Days in Vienna begins in the year 2000. Charlotte has died, and the story moves on to Lillian's daughter, Elizabeth. Now, with a family of her own, Elizabeth suddenly realises the need to discover her Viennese Jewish roots, but in the process finds some unpalatable truths about the established English family into which she has innocently married. The following reading by author John Steinberg is where Elizabeth has just found Charlotte's private correspondence with her lover, a former Nazi doctor. That throws everything into doubt that she thought she knew about her surrogate aunt. This kickstarts querying her own identity and, more seriously, of those closest to her.
That evening, Elizabeth sat on the edge of the bed, her head full of contradictory thoughts. The evening had been a complete disaster. Until now, she had usually got on reasonably well with her in-laws, so her uncharacteristic outburst was something she ascribed to having drunk too much. What was that all about? Her husband's well-spoken voice inquired from behind the crime novel he'd been pretending to read. I never realized how narrow-minded they were until now, Elizabeth said moodily. What? Just because of my father's few disparaging remarks about that Pakistani chap Mustafa? A bit of an overreaction on your part, wouldn't you say? You always told me how good Mustafa was at his job, Elizabeth retorted, turning to face the lean figure sprawled out on the king-size bed. True, but let's face it, he's hardly partner material with us. Because he doesn't quite fit the mould, you mean? An established practice like McCreary's does have to think of its reputation, you know, Anthony asserted, putting his book down to make his point. One which doesn't include anybody other than white Anglo-Saxon public schoolboys, I suppose. And a few upper-class lasses besides, Anthony said straight-faced. I'm surprised your family ever accepted me, the second-generation Austrian refugee, Elizabeth retaliated. Nonsense. You're practically as British as I am, and in any case, they adore you. Only because of the children, Elizabeth answered back. So what's brought all this on? You've been acting really strangely since you got back this evening, cutting it very fine, I might add. I'm sorry. It's just that I found going to Charlotte's flat really traumatic. Elizabeth would have liked to share the experience with her husband of 20 years, but knew she couldn't. Even after all this time, there was still so much they were unable to communicate to each other. I understand, Anthony said, reaching out to his wife. Accepting the invitation, Elizabeth moved over to lie beside him. Perhaps I didn't behave particularly well, she sighed. I'll ring your mother when they get back from France and apologise. Otherwise, they'd have every right to reconsider letting us use the villa in Antibes again this summer. I shouldn't worry. They'll have forgotten all about it by then. And anyway, they'll probably end up cancelling the trip. Dad's political commitments are taking up most of his time. He hardly comes into the office at all these days.
John now reads a second extract from 3 Days in Vienna that shows the true extent of the dangerous views held by Elizabeth's bigoted father-in-law, already well on the way to being transformed into a credible political force.
Over in the pretty rural setting of Bourton-on-the-Water in the Cotswolds, a meeting of the British Independence Party was about to commence. A robust man in his early 60s got to his feet, called for silence, and began to address the select group, which consisted in the main of 30 or so like-minded politicians and captains of industry. Good morning, gentlemen. I'm sure some of you need to get to London for the afternoon's vote in the Commons, so I'll keep it brief. Though, if it were up to me, I'd lock them all up and throw away the key. Cutting the age of consent for homosexuals. Whatever next, he bellowed. The comment brought subdued mutterings of approval. As your treasurer, William McCreary continued, I can confirm that as of last night, contributions pledged have passed the £3 million mark. That is correct, isn't it, Rupert? He addressed the obese financier with a black eye patch who sat to his right. The relationship with Meredith's bank went back over 40 years. Of course he was aware of the controversy surrounding the bank's dealings with so-called German war criminals, fugitives living in South America, but that had proved no more than a temporary blot on their reputation, and they were soon able to resume their rightful position among the city's elite institutions. More importantly, Meredith remained resolutely supportive of the BIP's cause and shared its nationalistic aspirations. Quite so, and we're happy to match that sum, with certain provisos, of course, the old banker croaked, appearing to have great difficulty in staying awake. So we are now more than able to field sufficient candidates to fight next year's general election, McCreary resumed. I'm also delighted to announce, as of this morning, the signing of the lease of our offices at 18 St James's Street. Spontaneous applause broke out around the original Tudor drawing room. William McCreary smiled with satisfaction, knowing he was one step nearer to achieving his objective of holding the balance of power at next year's general election. Naturally, the BNP would side with the Conservatives, many of whom shared their policies, but their allegiance wouldn't come cheap. Glancing at the bust in the corner of his hero Oswald Mosley, William liked it when things went according to plan. He knew he was taking a chance putting his son Anthony in charge of the firm that he'd run single-handedly all these years. But this would leave him free to pursue his secret ambition to change the face of British politics.
Great, thank you. John, that was very clever. You managed to read without moving your lips.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we can open up for comments, questions, anything you'd like to bring into discussion. Who'd like to begin? So you can, if you can see you're on the screen, you can wave. You can stick up your hand at the bottom. There's a place under reactions where you can put up your hand. Who'd like to begin? Yes, Linda Walton.
Hi, John.
Hi,
and
Linda.
Everyone else.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah, good to see you, and well done. It's a major achievement producing anything. As a writer, fellow writer, I know that. So your first book was Blue Skies.
First book was Shimon.
Of this trilogy. It was Blue Skies Over Berlin.
Yeah.
And then this one, 3 Days in Vienna. Yeah. So where is the third one going to be set? It has to be another attractive European city.
Well, that's what Joe and even Joe, my editor, said we want to find another location, but I'm not absolutely sure. I think at the moment I've actually started it, but it won't be next year. It'll be the year after. Okay. It has to resolve itself again with an unusual protagonist, and I've found a very unusual protagonist, which I think will be a surprise. I think that it predominantly will be based in London. Not exclusively, but pretty well. Okay. And the reason for that I can't go into now, but it just seems to be right, and it seems that it will. There may be one other location. In fact, there will be, but and I won't tell you what that is either.
Okay.
But it will. It has to resolve itself, and actually, for the first time, the way that 3 days finishes really does leave itself open. It has to be. There are issues that have to be resolved.
Yeah, and I think I'm right in saying you've self-published. Is that right? So that's true. How are you getting the books out there, and how are you managing to sell?
I think Catherine's here tonight. Catherine Cousins of 2QT, who I've been lucky enough to use for since Shimon came out in 2013. I think that 2QT would describe themselves, I'm not wrong, Catherine, as a cross between independent publisher and self-publishing, and they are a production house. But as I understand it, they're quite selective. They won't, because they put their name to the book. I think they have to be reasonably satisfied that it's going to be that it's okay. And so the reason for doing that more than ever now is that it seems to me that the normal agent publishing route is one which is not going to be bypassed by everybody, but certainly there are more and more people doing self-publishing. The route, as you know, trying to get your work out there through these organizations on the internet, and America in particular, is what we really need, because we just can't wait for the phone to ring and say, you're bottom of the list, and in 10 years' time you may get a result. But things are changing very quickly, and fortunately, we're going to take advantage of that. But having a production house like 2QT that produce a really good book, I think is an advantage. And then from there, it's up to us. So I work with a team of people all of whom I think are here tonight. Kerry on marketing, who introduced it. Joan, who is, and I have to thank these people in any case, Joan Deach, my editor and main sounding board for new ideas. One person I'd like to, Fiona, obviously, for the beautiful covers. All the covers are original drawings. So I think that's actually quite an advantage. And I want a special thanks to Alexa, who's tuning in from Vienna. I wasn't able to go over to Vienna, which I had planned to do, to get some of the locations, make sure that they were accurate. You can only do so much research away from the country itself. And I wasn't able to go for one reason or another. And Alexa is a tour guide. And I was introduced to Alexa, and we met over the internet, and she very kindly corrected some of the points in the book. It's so that the locations were right, the distances between locations were right, etc., etc. And without her help, it couldn't have been done. So I'm really grateful to her. And anybody who wants a really good tour guide for Vienna, I think she's here. I'm very happy to give the details.
Right. But well done, you.
So maybe, I don't know if people, Catherine, maybe it's an opportunity just to talk about the maybe other people who are interested in what you do. Do you want to say 2 words about 2GT, how you're different and how you can help budding writers, if that's appropriate?
Oh, well, yeah, I don't want to sort of impinge on John's great moments here.
I wish you would.
Congratulations, John. I haven't seen you for a few years now. Hello, everybody. Yes, we set up the company sort of 20 odd years ago, and started off as a publisher taking on titles, but realized very quickly that we were probably a little bit out of our depth, and our passion and focus was much more on the production and style of the books that we were putting out. So we've kind of sort of narrowed our path through now to where we are today, where we are just working with authors who want to publish independently to take them through all the processes of getting their book published. So editing, proofing, doing the cover design, or working with others to produce the cover design, the layout, that sort of thing. So we work with the author and a team of people around to create what we would like to see, a professionally produced book. As John said, we don't take on all the work that comes to us. So people will submit their manuscripts to us, and although they're paying for the work to be published, we actually turn away probably more than we take on, because mainly we feel we want to work with manuscripts that have got the potential to get to a level of publishing and readability, etc. So if there's things that come to us that are really in their very, very initial first drafts or really not publishable, then we just sort of decline politely and say it's not something we'd like to do. So we like to work with authors, and we usually take on work that we enjoy doing. And yeah, we work with all sorts of different people, and John included.
And I must say, you gave me a very, very hard time when I submitted my first script to you, and it was returned to me with more red lines I ever got at school. And I realised that what you're saying is 100% right. You know, how am I going to get this book published? And I learned.
Yeah,
and
the idea is to help authors to learn as well. That we want authors to go through and learn their trade.
Yeah.
And so
well, I learned to write. I mean, I was a playwright in those days, and I learned to write novels on the job, and that's what actually happened. Shimon was the first one, and 5 books later, we're still with you. So something must be doing something right.
Yes. Well, hopefully doing something right. But we do enjoy working with the authors. So
Thank
yeah.
you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Okay.
John.
Hello.
Yeah, Jonathan.
I think I recognise the face.
Yeah. Hello. Excellent cover and an extract. I haven't read the book, but I noticed once again that it features racists and dodgy politicians. And in life, really, one's taught that you should write about the things that is closest to you and the thing that you have most affinity with. And I wondered whether, in a sense, you're making some sort of wider political comment in featuring such charming characters again and again in your book.
That's an interesting question. The whole point of a book is, or my books, that although they ostensibly are fiction, they have to be plausible. And if you look at the political climate starting in 2000, which it starts, and with the Blair government and the influx of immigration, there was a huge rise in right-wing sentiment. So historically, this thing actually could have happened. So the political background is accurate. It has to be. The rest of the story also it's fiction, but something that could well have happened. It's true, I spent many, many years in business. I'm not sure that I actually came across as many rogues I actually write about, but I don't think it was beyond the people that I write about to have actually come up and have done these particular things. And so therefore it's not completely foreign to me, and it's not using too much of imagination to think that it could have happened. But you know, my books, as you know, Jonathan, been very kind to read. Most of them are very plot driven, but that's on one level. The whole point of the book, I hope, is that they're looked at on more than one level. And what the main thrust of this particular book is Elizabeth trying to find her identity, which she's forfeited. Elizabeth was as I mentioned, a very problematic child because she had a mother who she couldn't relate to. The mother was damaged as a result of being a child of the Kindertransport. And so therefore she does everything that she can to kind of escape that time. She was very happy with her father. Father died quite early, but that she tried to escape from her mother, got married, gave up a very successful job in music publishing for a settled life that she thought she wanted. The trouble was she forfeited her individuality. And part of the, I'm not giving too much away, she attends a weekly women's group with other women who have similar problems in their lives. And she knows that there is something wrong, even though she's got the settled family that she thought she wanted. A couple of wartime experiences, which I mentioned in the video, kind of stir her to find out more, ostensibly about her maternal Austrian family, but actually it's about herself. And it really is a journey of a long awakening. I hope that answers that question and more.
I would like to say, I have a couple of points.
Yes, good. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Me, from my suppose, as a technical point of view, as an author, and having gone through the publishing process, a couple of points. One is you talked about the interplay of the characters and the damage that they suffered psychologically, and what's driven them and so forth. Number one, did you research the psychology, the technical psychology behind that to be able to embellish the kind of reactions that these damaged individuals sustained and how they manifested that into, the intersocial interplay between them? That's the first question. Second one is really just going on the back of the comments that you made when you're speaking to your publisher before. You mentioned lots of red lines in your manuscripts. I mean, generally speaking, was that just to do with the way you drafted the paragraphs, or was it more basic than that? Just give us an idea of the kind of challenges you faced in correcting for what the publisher picked up in your work.
I'll do the second question first. The thing was, I became a writer quite late in life. I started writing my first bits and pieces around 2005. 2007, I wrote a treatment for a play or a film, but I've never actually written anything that was ever going to be put on. And I learned, first of all, to write plays with someone who held my hand, as it were. I ended up being the producer, which was actually something I had not intended to do. And as I said last year, I never had so much fun losing money. But the thing was, I learned on the job how to write. Now, a theatre script is mainly dialogue. And I learned how to write, which is why today most of my books are dialogue-driven, they're dialogue-oriented rather than descriptive. But the plots are driven by dialogue. So I learned how to write, first of all, a play. And then someone said to me, an old school friend, he said, why don't you, I could introduce you to a publisher. I said, I've never written anything that requires a publisher. One of the plays I wrote on my own, because I needed to find out whether I could write on my own, was about a gladiator. It was a biblical, very famous biblical figure in the 3rd century of the Common Era, who was purported to have been a gladiator or robber early in life, and then he became a sage. And it was his trajectory from sage and gladiator from gladiator robber to sage, which I like the idea of personal journeys, which kind of sort of reflected my own journey from what I used to do and why I'm actually a writer at all. But I didn't know how to write a novel. So I started to muck around, and then I was introduced to Catherine and her editor. So, the idea is a good idea, but you need to know how to write a novel. And that's where the red lines came in. You know, you don't do this, you don't do this, you don't. Now that stayed with me. I corrected it and I went over and over and over and over again. And eventually it was considered, which is, I really appreciated QT saying it's, you know, it needs to be right. And when it is right, we'll publish it. So I learned a lot, again, on the job. And that's what I did. And since then, I've purely concentrated on novels, although that's changing slightly at the moment. In terms of research of the psychological issues of some of the characters, no. I mean, they're just things which I can imagine to be plausible. If the reason why Elizabeth is treated so badly from a damaged mother is quite obvious and becomes very obvious in 3 Days in Vienna, when Elizabeth examines and goes into the maternal Austrian family, which she was denied any knowledge of. And when she actually finds one particular thing out, the whole thing makes complete sense. So she kind of, it is a journey of many different types of, it's certainly a journey of awakening as far as she's concerned, because she's not actually quite sure why she's making the journey in the first place. In fact, she regrets it very early on. You know, I really shouldn't be here. I should be with my family skiing. Like, what am I actually doing here? Because the first part of the journey is very problematic. And then it unravels, you know, she's there for more than what she actually thought. And that's a problem. Because how do you go back to where you come from when you've experienced what she experienced? And it's difficult. And something takes over for the next half of the book, which kind of, she kids herself that she can be, you know, they can be part of a happy family again. But actually, what she discovered about herself prevents her from doing that. And as I say, the book, certainly in the last chapter, leaves it open for a third book and for certain issues to be resolved.
Many thanks, and brilliant reading. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stuart. Who else would like to come up with something? I don't know whether, Kerry, you had some.
Yes,
but
we
I'm
had,
sure
we had,
comment you
yeah,
wanted
we had
to
a couple
make,
of questions come through via email before the launch. A lot of them actually been covered, but what somebody wants to know in Cranbrook, you talked about your background being in comedy and writing children's books, and it's obviously a complete contrast with the quite dark aspects of your novels. But are you finished with the comedy and the stage yet?
Actually, no. I want to go back to comedy as soon as I possibly can. but not be, you know, first of all, I think that there's a demand for comedy in the difficult times that we've been witnessing for the last couple of years. And also, I'm trying to do more than one thing at a time. And I've actually, as you know, got a sort of comedy, tongue-in-cheek little book coming out, I hope, in the first half of next year, which is slightly philosophical, slightly funny, but it's certainly more amusing than the dark subjects which I've chosen hitherto in my novels. And I think that comedy will certainly play a part going forward. It's difficult you can't write, it's very difficult to write a novel which is comical. That doesn't work. So I've got to channel my comedy into other areas of writing, but not a novel, because that it just wouldn't work.
What about the stage? Because obviously you had quite a successful
I'm actually
playwriting.
I'm actually going back and I'm backtracking on a lot of my work to make sure I can exploit it in the best possible way. There's actually no point carrying on writing more novels and more without actually exploiting what you've done before to the best. And you know that what we're trying to do together. I'm actually writing at the moment a stage play for Nadine. Nadine is the third book about a failing producer and a memory and an unfulfilled obligation to the only woman who he really loved, which was a dancer called Nadine. And it's very visual. And I thought it'd be a nice idea to see how that would work on stage. And so the play will be called Nadine. The emphasis will be changed, probably more making her the main character than the failing musical producer. And it's going to be an interactive, the idea is it will be interactive between a screen, live performance, and a few other bits going on as well to tell the story. So
are you just capitalizing on the popularity of Strictly Come Dancing?
Well, I don't know. As long as I don't appear, I don't mind. I'm not sure. The thing is interesting. The thing is, it's going to be a musical now. It's going, or at the moment, it's going to be a play with music. Whether it is written as a full-blown musical, I don't know. But I want to get the first act is done. I'm going to show that, present it to a few people and see whether we're on the right track. It'll be a 3-act play, and I think it should work. But also, because it's theatre, it's easy to get put on. It's easy to get put on trying to get a television commissioner or film producer to produce things. So I think that with all the technology available to us, a modest play that's not going to cost a fortune in terms of setting and actors and things like that. I think it could be done quite reasonably. But the idea is it adds ammunition to the book that's already there, and then we'll see. In fact, I think Joan, who's here tonight, editor, showed the book to somebody in Paris who an actor and thought it was a really good part. So I think it's going to be interesting trying to cast Nadine. It shouldn't be too difficult, but and it's something which is, I think is exciting, because I'm going back to where I started. It's dialogue. It's the dialogue which I understand.
Oh, that's great. Back to 3 Days in Vienna. When do we envisage that being available to buy on Amazon? I think it is quite soon, isn't it?
I think Catherine could answer that if she's still in mourning. I mean, I think it's going to certainly be before Christmas. I mean, there are a few technical things to be done, and depending on Amazon's pipeline is like, it should be quite soon. So as soon as we know, and we'll know in the next couple of days.
Can I just say to everyone that I'm just about to post in the chat a little link so that you can sign up by email, so that as soon as the book is available on Amazon, we can let you know that it's available to either pre-order or buy. So I'm just going to do that now. So if you wouldn't mind clicking on that link and signing up to us, that would be great, and then we can let you know when it's going to be out.
Thanks, Kerry. John, a question. You said partway through writing this book, you decided there was a third book.
Yeah.
It's going to be a trilogy. How do you know it's going to be a trilogy and not going to be 4 or 5 books? How do you know?
Because I run out of ideas. No, I mean, it has to be resolved, and it can be resolved. As I say, I've got the main character in mind, who is a very unusual, unobvious protagonist. And that character, I'm not saying whether it's he or she, but will resolve the whole thing, and that's it. I've got to get on with other things. I mean, I mentioned the play that I'm doing, I mentioned the little comedy, which I'm going back to, but I've also written the first of a series of a crime series, which is something completely different. And when that is done, when I need to go over that a few times, I hope to be able to bring that out next year. So it's to be, again, a different genre to kind of broaden the appeal. But that's an unusual undercover situation, and hopefully it's different enough to hope to attract interest. So there's a lot going on, but it doesn't happen in 5 minutes.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other? Yeah. I mean, I need, before, in case I forget to do this, which is really wrong, I do want to thank everybody who's helped me with the particular book. First of all, Nick for hosting the event. Yes, Kerry.
Catherine's just said it is on Amazon, and it's literally just arrived. So we've just posted the link in the chat, and you can pre-order it now.
Okay.
Exciting.
Excellent. Draw things to a close. John, was there anybody else you wanted to thank? I think you'd already thanked.
Yes. Well, first I want to thank Circle, again, for Nick for hosting, and I think I've already thanked Catherine, Joan, who continues to be an invaluable sounding board editor. I think she's tonight. Fiona for the cover, Alexa again for the virtual tour of Vienna that helped me write the book, and my family for putting up with me for yet another adventure that doesn't seem to be coming to an end anytime soon, which I'm sorry to say, but that's how it is. I mean, just one thing goes on to another, and I have many ideas, and just hope that some of them that come to fruition. But there is no sign at the moment of drying up. I'm sure it's going to happen one day, but it hasn't happened yet.
That's brilliant. It sounds like next time we meet, we should be in person watching your musical, right, John? That should.
Well, I don't know. We'll see what happens. We'll see. I mean, if conditions return to anything like how they used to be, whatever normality was, anything's possible. But there have been a very strange couple of years, as you know, which is why we do it with these Zoom things. Although I think they're attractive anyway. But we'll see. You'll certainly will be the first to know if anything comes out from a theatrical point of view, and provided it's not like Mel Brooks Producers that open and close on the first night.
Well, it's got a tax dodge, right? Tax benefits. So look, can I ask you, those whose screens are on, just put your hands together to thank John for sharing that with us. We really enjoyed hearing about it. Sounds like you can pre-order the book on Amazon. Hopefully, also we'll be able to buy it in the independent bookstores at some point. And you can sign up on John's website if you want to sort of subscribe and have information about it.
Nick, if there are any other questions after this that people want to ask, I would rather do that. Personally, I'm very happy to answer emails. I mean, there may be people who would rather not do it on a live platform like this, which I completely understand, because I'm not sure I would, except that I have to answer as the author. But if there are any other questions, I'm very, very happy, certainly from a writing perspective as well. Any potential writers or budding writers who want a reason to do it or not to do it, I think that I'm probably able to help them.
Brilliant, thank you. And just before you all go, just to mention, we have a couple of things coming up in Circle Square for those who are interested. Next Friday, we have our fortnightly coffee morning. It's on a completely different topic. We're going to hear from Andrew Brown, who's a director of our partner, one of our partners, Stretton's. He's director of auctions, and he's going to talk about the mysteries and secrets of buying property at auction. And on Thursday, the 9th of September, to start to get us into the festive mood, we have a chocolate tasting with our friends Cocoa Runners, focusing on the science of taste. So just a couple of things in Circle Square. The web link to Circle Square, if you're interested in learning more, is also on the chat, and hopefully we will see some of you again. We'd love to have you as members or as interested parties. And John, again, thank you so much for this evening. Kerry, thank you, and we look forward to reading three days in Vienna very, very soon, and hope to see you all again. Thank you.